Hey everybody, I am Ryan Carson, the founder of Carsonify, and today we have a very special show I'm really excited about, and I'm joined today by Alan.
Hey.
Hi. And
Hi.
Jim.
Hey.
And Nick.
Hello, hello.
So today we're going to do something different. We're going to sort of talk about interesting issues that we think you guys want to know about, and we're not really going to answer many questions from the chat room. Feel free to throw them in there if you want, but mainly going to be talking about some interesting topics today. So first of all, why are Al and I in the Orlando office? And it's because we traveled especially to be here. So we're having a big meeting talking about Treehouse this week and some exciting things we're doing. I'm also going to be recording a video series on startups and business, and hopefully that will go okay for all of you people who are ThinkVitam members. So, and I guess I should plug our own service, which is ThinkVitam membership. So if you guys don't know about that, make sure to check out membership.thinkvitam.com, where we teach you guys how to be web nerds, basically. So, all right, so this week we're going to talk about a couple things. Cloud Foundry, Spine, Recurly, Rails, CoffeeScript, Skizzen, and IE10.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. So let's kick it off by talking about Cloud Foundry. Alan, why don't you take that away and tell us what you're thinking about that, and then we'll tell you what we think about that.
Oh yeah. So Cloud Foundry is basically a new platform as a service by VMware. Ezra, I guess Zygmuntwix or whatever is Ezra Zygmuntwix. I don't know how to say his last name, but it's got a Z and lots of crazy letters. But basically, it's a platform of as a service that he's been working on, heading up at VMware for a while. And the really interesting thing that they're doing though is they're hosting a platform as a service, but they're also releasing the software open source. So you can download the gem and run that platform on your own hardware as well as on theirs.
Really?
For me, that's a really big deal. It's one of the things that's kept me from running larger production apps on something like Heroku, for example, is there's not a really good migration path away from Heroku to your own platform when you get large enough that Heroku becomes cost prohibitive.
So you're saying like literally become your own cloud service?
Yes.
But why would you ever do that? I mean, wouldn't that be a tremendous amount of investment in infrastructure and pain? I mean, yes,
yes.
You become Facebook, great.
But it's not unusual to hit issues as you get larger where, we can't necessarily do this on Heroku very well, or we can't necessarily do, like there are reasons that Google runs their own hardware and Facebook runs their own hardware, and significantly smaller companies also run their own hardware. Or for example, I've run almost every app that I've run for larger sites inside of EC2 configured on our own.
Got it.
And so for that, a platform like that can be really useful. So you have kind of a foundation that you can build on to do what you need to do.
So, but for everyone watching, I mean, how would you actually, what would be the workflow of using Cloud Foundry?
It looks to be, I haven't run it yet. I'm really interested in kind of running it on my own, like a VM on my computer or maybe inside of EC2. But from how it looks, it's really similar to Heroku. I don't know that they do exactly the get-based workflow that Heroku uses, but they do they basically have a command line tool where you set up a new app off of the command line and then push to your app to deploy it. I know that they scale up basically equivalent to kind of how Heroku has dynos.
Right.
You add the number of app instances that you have and scale them up and down.
And do you have to have your own like co-load server to do this?
So you can run it on your own equipment, but you can also use their hosted service as well.
What's your thought, Mr. Developer?
It looks really cool. I mean, I haven't had a chance to really delve into it. I'm trying to get an idea of how it would work. I've never had to manage my own systems like that in depth too much. So it's kind of cool to have sort of that cloud thing coming into your control now. So you have.
Do you guys think though that basically the big cloud providers like Amazon, I guess it's being the main one right now, will implement this standard so that you could easily transition from Cloud Foundry into EC2? Does that even make sense?
I think it's going to be a challenge because the way that if you look at App Engine, so you kind of have you have the platform as a service and then you have infrastructure as a service. So Amazon is infrastructure as a service. They expose servers and they expose disk. Rackspace is the same way. But then when you look at somebody like Windows Azure, whatever, and you look at Google App Engine, they're platform as a service. So the thing that scares me about platform as a service is you write your app the way they want you to write it.
Right.
And then you can't go anywhere but to them without changing your app to some
You're
extent.
locked in. Yeah.
And so I think this is really good because you can take infrastructure as a service like Amazon, put a open source platform as a service on top of that, and you've got your infrastructure. And if you decided, oh, we need to move to Rackspace, that would be possible.
Got it. So it's interesting. We might as well tell everyone listening that we're planning on transitioning ThinkVita membership or Treehouse over to Amazon, and I'm excited about. Right now, we're on a dedicated Rackspace server, and I think that we're. I really wish that we would have set up on EC2 from the beginning, but Alan's come up with a pretty cool structure diagram for that. Should be good.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about IE10. Nick, tell us what you think about that.
All right.
And maybe backdrop with IE9. Like, how do you think things are going with IE9? Now we're already talking about IE10.
Right. So it did come pretty suddenly that Microsoft announced the Internet Explorer 10 Platform Preview 1 just a couple of days ago, and I feel like we were just talking about IE9, because IE9 did just come out not too long ago. I don't know. I mean, I'm really happy that Microsoft is continuing to update their browser, and they're not letting their platform sort of stagnate anymore like I think they have done in the past.
And they're pushing people off IE6.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh yeah.
Well,
for
they're
sure.
trying. Yeah.
They're doing the best they can.
So long as you get Windows 7 or Vista, right?
Right. So that is another thing. But I think IE10 looks really cool. In terms of CSS3, as a designer, I'm really excited that they are finally bringing support for gradients. I feel like that should have come probably in IE9 or earlier, but
It's not IE9.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's not an IE9. So I'm happy they're bringing that in IE10. And they're also bringing multi-column layouts, which are pretty cool. Those have pretty broad support already across all the browsers, so it'll be nice to have those in IE10 and really be able to start using those a little bit more actively. But there's this whole debate that's going on between, I guess, a native platform and HTML5, or
Well,
you want to talk about that, Alan?
Microsoft, basically, the PR engine that is Microsoft, released this kind of press release where they use the word native like 90 times or whatever, and they're basically pitching that they're the native web versus I think that's mainly a dig at Chrome because Chrome is cross-platform. So they're saying that they have advantages because they're built into Windows.
Oh, right.
I think that's really questionable though because Chrome, what they're using as evidence for that is the fact that they have a faster canvas.
Right.
But that's only one aspect, and it's questionable how valuable that is depending on what application you're running.
Right. I
and
think the ability to render a whole bunch of fish isn't necessarily
Yes.
a good
What is
benchmark.
fish?
Awesome.
Like,
Yeah.
that's like 5,000 fish. How is that
How
not
awesome
going
can
to
you get?
advance the web?
But that said, I think it is really important that they're moving that way. They're writing a native, they're JITting their JavaScript, and they're doing the things that all the other browsers are doing.
Right.
But I think we're once again seeing the Microsoft PR engine.
Yeah, but I think though that we should counter that with actually a bit of positivity because the thing is like whether we like it or not, lots of people are on IEs,
Right.
And so for us that are web professionals, the more people on a more advanced version of IE, the better. So
Yes.
I know a lot of it's BS, and they're trying to get people to get excited about it, but in the end, it's like I saw a big ad for IE9 when I was coming here. I went from Victoria Station in London, and there was literally a billboard about IE9. It's like, okay, that's good. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I kind of wish it would show a little more humility. I mean, they're doing a little bit of like admitting like, hey, we didn't do well. But I think if they went something like the Domino's like pizza rebrand, where like we sucked, we're sorry, try this, it's gonna be good. Instead of being like we sucked, but now this is the best thing ever, believe
And
us.
I think they
That's
have
kind
done
of
a bit of that with IE6 and their marketing for that, trying to push people up. But
I think if they went with the approach like, hey, try 10, it's really, or try 9. We think it's going to be better instead of being like it's hands down better because it's native. I feel like that's a little arrogant.
Yeah.
So let's go across the board. What browsers are you guys using as your main browser?
Chrome.
Chrome.
Chrome?
Safari.
Ooh.
Whoa!
you
Combo breaker.
switched, so let's hear about that.
Well, I've always felt like Safari kind of had a more beautiful interface than Chrome. Like, I feel like Chrome, I use a Mac, and we all use Macs, but I feel like Safari looks a lot more like a Mac app necessarily than Chrome does. Chrome's getting better, but there's some funny things like the bookmarks toolbar in Chrome. They like put the little weird folders on there and some stuff like that I don't like. Back in the day, it always frustrated me that the close button on tabs was red.
Yeah.
It feels like dangerous that you're closing a tab. They're not doing that anymore, and I think Chrome's getting better. But
sorry, go ahead.
But it's just there's something about Safari that I really love, and there's something that has always been a little like, I think the whatever it's called, the special Chrome search bar is really good, but there are also spots where I run into issues with that, where like I type in a URL that's a little bit misformatted, and whereas like normally the browser would have it would have automatically handled it and cleaned it up, Chrome can't do that, and so they search for it instead.
But I think this leads to a more interesting discussion. I don't want to focus on too much, but I think we probably should be using the browsers that we feel our customers are using, right? There's a certain argument to be made, because what was funny about it is you were on the dev branch of Chrome, and you're like, and you said, "Oh, it works fine." I'm like, "No, it doesn't." Yeah. And I was on the production release branch, and I think it actually happens a lot to developers. We love being on beta branches or even nightly builds, but actually that's totally not real. What do you guys think about that?
For sure.
Oh, yeah, you have to definitely test against different versions, and I mean, I love Chrome. It's the fastest. It's what I use at home, and sort of what transfers to my job too. It has sort of a minimal amount of visual noise, has an awesome set of tools. I think I really prefer the dev tools to Firebug even at this point. But you definitely have to test everything in everything pretty much. You can't get away from it.
Yeah, I know what you mean about using the latest versions. I think it was Firefox 4 I was on a beta release before it actually came out, and I was doing something with I think it was transitions. I'm gonna get caught here, but it was something to do with CSS3, and worked great. I was like, oh, cool, and it actually turned out that was new in Firefox 4, and I didn't know that. So I thought, Firefox is awesome. I'm sure it's supported, but that can get you for sure.
So, Owen, Richard, I understand you're frustrated. So we are not doing questions this week, but for you, we will do a question. So if you come up with a freaking awesome question, we'll take it. Yeah. So just pop it in the Q&A, and if it's the bomb, we'll do that. But meanwhile, while you think of your question, let's move on. What do you guys want to cover? Spine, Recurly, Rails, CoffeeScript?
You want to take on Spine, Jim?
Yeah. So Spine is a new JavaScript framework that was released. Was it this week? I mean,
I think it was this
week. Or
week.
did I just find out about it this week? Sometimes I'm late. But Spine, it's a cool JavaScript application framework, a very lightweight one. And if it sounds a lot like Backbone, it looks a lot like Backbone, even the documentation and a lot of its examples look like Backbone. But it's very, very small and compact, but it has sort of some different opinions on how to do things. So the way models are set up, it uses more of the prototypal inheritance instead of copying stuff over and trying to mimic a classical inheritance. And some of the things I really like about it, I haven't had a chance to use it very much yet, but compared to Backbone, its ability to store into local storage out of the box, whereas in Backbone there's sort of another adapter you had to get. I kind of like some of the decisions that they made. I think it's going to be a lot cleaner. I've done a whole masterclass on Backbone, so I'm really familiar with that. Now I'm looking at Spine, I'm like, yeah, that's a good call. And I think it's good that there's sort of that competition, or somebody taking those ideas and building more of them. I like the idea of a smaller micro framework to worry about your data and persistence and stuff, and then let things like jQuery and stuff worry about DOM manipulation. So this says it's 500 lines of code, under 2K zipped. It's really small, but it does kind of all the things that you need it to do.
Michael, could you throw that URL up there for us, for Spine, just so that you guys watching can check it out. So how do you feel, so if you're a typical web developer, and right now, say you're a Rails developer, how would this fit into your tool set?
It's good. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where if you're having sort of a long life cycle page where you're doing a lot of different Ajax. You may be like having an admin panel where you add something and it needs to update the page, but you're not doing a full like refresh. It allows you to actually manage your sort of data models inside of the JavaScript page, synchronize it with Ajax, and then if something updates, it sort of triggers all those changes all the way down to the page layer. So if all of a sudden a new record is created and it's now in the database, it alerts all the different parts of your page, and now all of a sudden your table has that new row in it without you sort of watching everything and connecting it. So it gives that sort of structure or the backbone or spine of your application without really forcing a graphical toolkit on you like some of the bigger frameworks can.
Wow, very cool. Love it. And do you guys know who's behind it?
Looking at the GitHub page, Macman on GitHub, MACCMAN. I would have to actually look it up.
Macman, and that's with two C's, so it's not like a Mac fanboy. I think that's actually the guy's name.
All right. What's wrong with being an Apple fanboy?
Hold on, I might be able to pull it up. But
Well, I think that sounds really awesome. I mean, Alan, are we going to use Spine?
I don't know.
In Treehouse?
Alex McCaw.
I
No.
have no clue. I haven't looked at it yet. I do think though, I mean, that's actually it's like a perfect segue into our next topic. But the interesting thing to me about Spine when I saw it was what you were talking about with local storage is like they actually kind of there's always a trade-off when you're writing a framework like that between flexibility or like making a decision and kind of going with it.
Right.
And I think that's really good in a lot of ways because it almost always makes if you fit that use case, it almost always makes it easier for the developer,
Right.
which kind of maps to what we were talking about doing, which was the whole Rails CoffeeScript decision this past week, which I think is a very similar decision.
Cool, take it away. Tell us about that.
I'm not sure if everybody saw it, but basically what happened is there was a commit with a quite an impressive GitHub comment thread where basically the Rails core team committed a change that added the CoffeeScript gem and said that CoffeeScript was going to be, it was stated as the default JavaScript compiler for Rails. I think from what I've read and looking at the source, what it really means is just if you go and grab some JavaScript and it maps to a .coffee file, it's going to compile that .coffee file on the fly and give you the JavaScript that's compiled. There was a lot of fuss about it though. It was a lot of why is this happening? Like, how did they make this decision without letting everybody vote and all that stuff? But I think it's actually got very minimal footprint for most people of like, really, if you don't put a .coffee file in your project, it's not going to do anything. But it brings up a really interesting kind of subject in terms of how do you manage your open source project? Where do you allow the community to give feedback? And where do you kind of like, we're going to make a really good decision for you? So does anybody have any thoughts about that? Or?
Well, I mean, when I first heard about it, when I saw, DHH tweeting and I saw all this controversy, I wasn't really paying too much attention to it, but I thought that they had made CoffeeScript some sort of like big default or something like that, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal because I think CoffeeScript is pretty awesome. But then when I heard from you that it was actually just a compiler they put in there, and that if you don't like it, you don't have to use it, I couldn't really understand why everybody was all up in arms about it. It's just not that big of a deal.
Some people hate CoffeeScript.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Is that just a flame war, or is there a reason?
I mean, I think a lot of people don't like CoffeeScript the same way a lot of people don't like Haml and Sass. They sort of are rightfully afraid of extra layers of abstraction on stuff. But, you need to evaluate each tool. I think I've looked at CoffeeScript pretty in depth and used it a lot. And there's not a whole lot of like leaky abstractions. Like it maps to the kind of right way of doing JavaScript in a lot of cases. And it's basically saving you keystrokes. It's not putting a whole new programming paradigm on top of the language. It's really just sort of fixing the syntax of JavaScript in a way. And I'm a big fan of Haml and stuff because it maps really close. It's not like it's creating a whole new paradigm for you to work in. It's kind of just taking the most common things you do and making them easier to represent, easier to read if you understand CoffeeScript or Haml or something like that. But some people really just don't like it. They think it's an extra thing to learn, and which is true. But I think it's usually worth it in a lot of cases if you're working in that stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, should we move on to Recurly?
Sure.
So we're using a really amazing service called Recurly we're going to be using Recurly for our recurring billing on ThinkVital membership. So just for all you guys watching out there, we up until now we've had a hand-rolled solution for doing the monthly recurring billing for all of you guys who are members. And the reason why we did that was specifically because we couldn't find a solution that supported VAT. So we're actually a UK company. Carsonified is a UK company, even though we're all Americans. And we have to charge VAT because of that. And it's basically like sales tax. And bizarrely, there was no recurring billing solution that would cover VAT. So we had to make our own solution. But thankfully, Recurly has come onto the scene and supports VAT and supports PayPal. And so when we relaunch Treehouse, we're going to be using Recurly. So maybe Alan, you can take us through, what are the benefits of using a third-party solution for recurring billing, and what are the cons?
I think the biggest benefit is me being the only developer on the project right now is I don't have to write the code, and I don't have to maintain the code, which is completely selfish. But
the cost is
the cost is negligible. We're gonna spend less than $450 a month, I think, on it, and so for us looking at it, it makes a lot of sense to do that and be able to take that away from us having to maintain that, and also for us in the future, it's not like this is the last web app we're ever going to write. And so it also is a nice platform for us eventually to be, to gain experience more in integrating Recurly and then say, okay, we're not going to write a billing system every time we make a different app.
So that's an interesting question. What if we launch another product, for ThinkVital members or Treehouse members later on? Can you connect in your current customers quite easily, or will it be a new instance of a new group of users?
We'd have to make that decision, but it would definitely be possible to integrate it.
Because I think a lot of companies are going this sort of these days this way, where building a suite of products as a company is a good idea. You start with one, if it works, then you build another one. Yeah. And I know that 37 Signals and another number of other companies have had to kind of go backwards and completely re-engineer their user system and their billing because they had to connect all these different services. So.
Yeah.
And I definitely have to say though that Recurly, I've been dealing with them. I feel bad. Their main support person is Rachel, is all I know, but she's been amazing in terms of helping us out. And I would definitely recommend anybody just get in touch with them. They're not paying me to say this right now. It'd be nice. It'd be nice if they were paying me to say this right now. But they're not. But she's been really amazing in just helping us out, answering every question we have. Has been completely patient. I probably sent her 15 emails, 20 emails in the last last Thursday and Friday. And but answered every question where they didn't have a feature. She was completely honest. It wasn't a salesy let us work on that for you. It was more like, we don't support that. I'll add it to Lighthouse, which is their issue tracker, and she's like, and we'll see where that goes.
So did you already talk about PayPal?
I did not.
No.
And that's a neat feature. They may be mad at me for mentioning it because it's in beta, but they were also the only billing service that we could find that didn't just support using your merchant account. A few of them will support multiple merchant accounts, but Recurly is actually adding a service in the future where you can use your normal merchant account, but you can also link your PayPal account to it. So when you go to checkout, you can choose PayPal, go through the normal PayPal recurring payment sign up, and go from there. And we've had quite a few customers. We already provide PayPal, but we've had quite a few customers say that that's kind of their preferred payment method.
So John, you had a question, and also Karen85, you had a question as well about Chargify and Spreedly. I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I'd like to hear your guys' opinion about, do you think it's important to add PayPal support to a web app?
I think so. I really like the convenience of PayPal just because, I don't have to type in my credit card again. And it's really as simple as that.
Yeah. You just remember your password and that's it.
Yeah. Right. I could be buying something that's, a small charge of $10 or $15 or something like that. And if I'm sitting there with my laptop and my wallet's in the other room where I have to go get my credit card, I'm just going to use PayPal. Yeah. It's really, just as simple as that.
It's important then.
It's convenience, really, is what it is.
Oh, definitely. I prefer PayPal. I do have my credit card memorized, so I don't actually have to go up and get it. So I can, but it's just a lot more typing.
I need to do that. It's a lot of numbers to memorize.
Yeah.
You have a very advanced
So
brain.
what is your credit card
It's
number?
16 digits.
Yeah. That's
No,
more than I
because
can
every
remember.
time my credit card gets stolen, I have to memorize a new number. It's a real pain.
Wow.
So PayPal, it's a lot easier.
So Karen and John, you guys said, well, what about Spreedly? SPREEDLY.com and Chargeify, which is Chargeify.com. And we did consider Chargeify.com. I want to say on air that I think they're an awesome company, and their support has been amazing. Lance, the CEO, is just a wonderful, helpful person, but they didn't support VAT, and I think they're working hard on it. Maybe it will be implemented, but we couldn't use them because of that. And I don't know about Spreedly. I mean, I know of it, but
I reviewed Spreedly, and I actually know Nathaniel Talbot. I'm not sure what Nathaniel's role is within the company, but I know Nathaniel's with Spreedly. Some of the issues that I saw with Spreedly, not that it's bad, sorry Nathaniel, but they've just launched a new neat thing called Spreedly Core that lets you kind of like transparently post your payment information so that you can avoid PCI compliance for the most part. But I felt like it was fractured, and I felt like Spreedly hadn't changed very much lately. So it was one of those where you kind of look, and if something hasn't been updated a lot lately, you're kind of like.
What's weird about that is Spreedly actually was the first recurring revenue web app third party. It's like, what do you call that? I don't know. Recurring revenue web app support third party tool. But anyway, they were the first one, and I knew about them back when we were doing DropSend, and that was like 2007. And it's interesting to look at how, as a startup, they clearly haven't iterated and expanded and pushed themselves hard enough, because right now they should be winning. I mean, they should have crushed this whole thing.
Right.
And Recurly is kind of new. I think they're Y Combinator, and they, you mentioned them, and I thought, yeah, these guys look legit. And then you look at the features. And so anyway, everyone listening, if you're building recurring revenue web apps, do not roll your own solution. It's just totally a waste of time and a source of pain and hurt. Use something like Recurly. It's great. So we'll probably briefly talk about a couple other things, and then we'll call it a day. If you guys have any last minute questions, please pop them in the chat room, and we'll get to those. But let's talk a little bit maybe about what we're doing at Treehouse and what we're thinking about that. Maybe Jim, you can walk us through a little bit about this crazy graph that we're making about subjects and how we're trying to figure this out.
Yeah. So part of what we're doing with Treehouse is we want to really focus on getting people going, sort of from zero to kind of whatever specialization they want to do. It turns out to be really hard. Like, you think about it and like, okay, you learn HTML and CSS and then something else, but there's so many topics that even fall under, Think Right a Minute Treehouse, and plenty of stuff that is sort of way outside of us. And how does it all connect? Like, do you learn CSS and then JavaScript, or do you learn, and what are the dependencies, and how can you learn effectively? So what we've been trying to do is sort of figure out the topic map of the entire web development, web design industry, and put down sort of every core piece of knowledge and figure out what you need to know before what, and how somebody would advance through that, which turns out to be a huge job. Like,
yeah, it's surprisingly difficult. It actually doesn't seem that hard. Like, yeah, you learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then you can start moving on to other stuff. Once you really start breaking it down, there's a lot of things in there that you need to pay attention to.
Like, how much of this do you need to know to learn that?
Yeah.
Right. You don't need to be a CSS3 expert to get on Rails.
Right.
But you should know some CSS, right? So like, there's just like levels of knowledge that you kind of need to figure out how much do you need to know to get here. But from that, you get some really cool things that you can generate if you create a graph like that. And like, oh, I want to be able to learn Rails, and you're like, okay, well, here's all the things you need to do to get up there. So it's something we're still actively working on, but I think it's going to be sort of the backbone of how Treehouse is organized. Even though you may not directly see it, it's a new sort of data structure for us, instead of thinking in sort of hierarchical terms. For now, we have this big directed graph.
Yeah. And then you've been thinking about some of the data structures behind that, and how we manage that in the back end. And it's a fun challenge. I think we're enjoying it, but what we're realizing that helping people learn web development, web design, the reason why it hasn't been done yet is because it's not an easy problem to solve. But we're looking forward to it. So, so let's see. I got a couple questions. What are your thoughts about all-in-one finance solutions for business versus individual solutions? That's actually a good question. Matan West. So the idea is, trusting your web app to something that's rolling all these financial solutions into one. Is that a good idea or not? I think it initially, to get going quickly, using something like Recurly is a good idea. The way it works is you have a bank, and then you have a merchant account, then you have a payment processor, and then you have a recurring billing processor. So with those four pieces will make up your financial structure. And I think adding Recurly to the end, or Chargeify, or anything, or Esprili, it just speeds things up. And you can always remove that and swap it out. So
well, there's a lot of polish there. We were talking about it at one time, and there's a lot of polish that you forget about when you initially you're thinking about your billing and invoicing and all, and you're like, a lot of times you're like, oh well, we just need to charge some money, and then you're like, oh, we actually have to send them a receipt, and then you're like, oh, somebody's going to ask us for a refund, and they're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and it snowballs into where you can write a really weak billing system very easily, but writing a full featured billing system that supports thousands of users and their requests every week is really, really hard.
It's hard. Yeah, and it's very important.
Yes.
It's how you make money. So you have to do it right. But the classic example is you want to get going quickly as a startup, want to get that done, and that's exactly why Recurly is a better idea to do that. So, well, I think that's it for this week.
Actually, before we go, I want to thank the two other members of our Carsoonify team who you're not seeing right now, but who are very much important to this webcast. John and Michael are video professionals. They're actively working cameras and switching feeds and doing all this awesome graphic stuff.
I agree. Good job,
and
guys.
set up the lighting and sound.
Thanks.
So we really appreciate their work. They're working furiously, quietly behind the scenes here to make all this work, but we really appreciate their work.
Yeah, we don't really do much. We just sit here and
we're
talk.
just sitting here. They
We're
set
just
all
talking
this
about
up.
stuff.
So
Thanks, guys.
So thanks.
Thanks.
All right, well, with that, please join us next week. We'll try to be at the right time next week. It was my call to be early, so sorry about that, but we'll try to do this again at 12 Eastern Time, right?
Yep.
Next week. I won't be able to join us. Unfortunately, I'll be back in the UK, but it will be our powerful Orlando team, and we'll see you next week. So thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you.
See you later.
See you later.
See ya.